Here's today's top nature and ecology topic, May 7, 2021. Cargo truck containing illegal lumber seized in Antipolo. Special guest today is Green Shed Philippines Director Mr. Chap on deforestation and illegal logging. Wildlife and Biodiversity One-on-One with Mr. James Breed, live. And One-on-One with Big and Patubig on protected areas and watershed management, exclusive.
Welcome to Sierra News Report, where we get fresh news and critical views straight from the experts themselves. I am Katli Kasan. For our top story, several cargo trucks were seized while en route to Marikina, coming from the mountainous part of Antipolo. According to the police, these trucks were transporting illegal pieces of lumber for industrial purposes. Upon inspection, it has been found that the driver failed to show proper documentation, causing the latter to be put behind bars. Here's June Gubat with more.
Police authorities were on board a patrol vehicle heading towards Antipolo when they noticed a cargo truck loaded with pieces of lumber bound towards Marikina. Suspicious that the cargo was illegally cut pieces of lumber, authorities immediately chased said truck. Upon catching up, authorities ordered the driver to provide required documents for the transport of the pieces of lumber. However, the latter failed to provide papers. The owner of the truck and lumber, Rodi Talen, was found to be guilty in violation of Forestry Code. Under the law, it is a must to secure first a legal document whenever one will be cutting, gathering, and/or collecting timber or other forest products, one of which are the lumbers found in the truck of Rodi. Rodi, on the other hand, contended that he secured a verbal permission from Bong Leonor, officer in charge of the DENR Centro in Antipolo City, before cutting the lumber. However, such contention is not meritorious in the eyes of our law. Mere possession of forest products without the proper documents consummates the crime under the Forest Code, a special law wherein mere possession is considered malum prohibitum. June Gubat, Sierra News Report.
Joining us today to enlighten us on this topic is Director of Green Shed Philippines, Mr. Ginifredo Chap. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Sierra News Report.
And good afternoon to Kat, and thank you so much for inviting me in your high-rating program. It is my pleasure to be with you today.
The pleasure is all ours, Mr. Puno. So, Mr. Puno, it is no secret that there still exists illegal logging and deforestation despite all environmental movements and advocacies. My question would be, what deforestation in today's context is, and how is it conducted here in the Philippines?
Kat, deforestation occurred. It is because of the rampant and rapid human utilization and exploitation of our forest. And one of the key factors that the population pressure and agricultural expansion, it also contributes to the deforestation. And when we go to illegal loggings, there are some reasons why this illegal logging has been rampant until today. First, it is because of the inadequate government resources for the effective implementation of our existing laws. Just like, for example, if you are living in a big city and you do have a little number of doctors, what's gonna happen is that not all people who has an illness can be covered by the said doctor because they are also occupied by the other patients. Same as on our forest for today. Knowing the fact that the Philippines is an archipelagic country and it is rich in natural resources, especially in our forest, there are some instances that on a specific area, we only have certain numbers of forest guards. And because of that, they cannot be able to cover the entire forest. That is why there are certain companies and there are certain people who can be able to enter to the said area and conduct their illegal activities, such as this illegal illegal logging, and it also contributes to the politics here in the Philippines, that because of this palakasan system, they have their special access into that barred places to conduct the illegal activities. And aside from that example, it also comes with the calamities that we have. We know for the fact that the location of the Philippines is very near, and we are the one who shelter first the calamity. That is why it is an accepting fact that there are some factors that, for example, a super typhoon shows here in the Philippine area of responsibility, and there are some damages that can be acceptable as long as it is a natural disaster, not a man-made.
So, if it is still rampant even after several cases being brought to the courts or to other governmental bodies, are there even laws or policies implemented by the government for certain restrictions? Or is the government granting certain somewhat privileges to some individuals or companies to engage in logging activities?
I'm so glad that you asked that, Kat. The Philippines has a certain laws about this. First, it is way back in 1977, where President Marcos signed a law by planting one tree every month for 5 consecutive years by every citizens of the Philippines. But sadly, it was been repealed by his successor, President Aquino, by the reason that that can be achieved without any penalties that has been provided by the said law. And up until today, what we have been practicing is the law that has been established in President Benigno Aquino III administration. This is what we call the National Greening Program. This program aims to increase the country's forest to cover, like for example, 1.5 million hectares of land with 1.5 billion of trees from 2011 up until 2016. In 2015, as far as I remember, the program has been expanded to cover all the remaining unproductive, denuded, and degraded forest land. And the implementation period has been extended also, that is very good, which is from 2016 up until 2028. And also in September 2012, President Aquino signed into law that requires all able-bodied citizens of the Philippines who are at least 12 years of age to plant one tree every year. But unfortunately, same as the presidential decree before in the time of Marcos, there's no provision in the law in the enforcement and monitoring to, in compliance to this requirement. But in May 2019, the House of Representatives approved a House bill, which is what we called the Graduation Legacy for the Environment Act, and it was been principally authored by Gary Arejano and Cavite Representative Strike Revilla. This House bill requires all graduating elementary, high school, and college students to plant at least 10 trees before they can graduate. The bill, however, same as the presidential decree, has not yet been signed by the president. But on June 2020, last year, DNR started allowing this what we call family approach, which is also under the National Greening Program that permits families to establish forest plantations. It is composed of a timber and non-timber species, and it also includes bamboo and rattan.
Okay, so that is a relief po, no, Mr. Pono, na our government is not silent about the issues regarding illegal logging and deforestation. Now, would you have any advice or measures you can suggest in order to suppress the problems of illegal logging and deforestation?
The only thing that I can say to this is that we should have visibility on the part of the government, because there is already laws and jurisprudence that we need to comply on. And the problem only is that on how to implement so that there will be no violator to continue this, devilish activity.
Yes, sir. I agree, Mr. Puno. Thank you, Mr. Ginifredo, Chap Puno, Director of Green Shed Philippines.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much also, Kat.
Thank you.
Fishermen of Barangay Matubig along the coast of the Pacific Sea have been apprehended and fined for having been engaged in the trade of collecting live fish for sale to middlemen who ship fish both to the city and abroad. With us today is the legal officer of Krusty Krab Foundation, Mr. James B. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Sierra News Report.
Hi, Miss Kat. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is all ours, sir. Mr. Breed, how is wildlife defined to start off?
Well, going by the definition given by RA 9147, or otherwise known as the Wildlife Protection and Conservation Act, wildlife means wild forms and varieties of flora and fauna in all developmental stages, including those which are in captivity or are being bred or propagated. Actually, in our country, we have a mega diverse variety of flora and fauna.
Well, sir, you have mentioned the term mega diverse. How can a country be considered mega diverse, and is the Philippines considered as one?
Yes, Miss Kat. Well, for a country to be considered as mega diverse, it is required to have at least 5,000 species of endemic plants and border a marine ecosystem. And the Philippines is considered as one of the few mega diverse countries in the world, while having high wildlife endemism due to its archipelagic nature. And according to the Biodiversity Management Bureau of the DENR, the country hosts more than 52,000 described flora and fauna species. In fact, the Philippines has been coined as the hottest of the biodiversity hotspots.
Speaking of which, sir, the Philippines as the hottest of the biodiversity hotspots, is there or are there threats to these so-called mega diverse countries?
Yes, Miss Kat. We have these things we call invasive alien species that are continuously threatening our environment. As of 2019, there are at least 780 identified threatened species in the country, and that is due to the lack of natural predators or competitors that these invasive alien species often displace native species and destabilize local ecosystems. And as of 2006, 47 alien species have already been introduced in the country.
Oh, okay. So there are thousands of species, however, are being displaced in our country. So, aside from these so-called threats to megadiversity, research shows that we have what we call threatened wildlife. What are those and their byproducts and derivatives? And is the collection of such species allowed?
Well, threatened wildlife are those which are likely to become endangered within the foreseeable future. It refers to wildlife that is at risk of extinction because of a sudden rapid decrease in its population or a loss of its critical habitat. The collection of threatened wildlife is allowed only for scientific or breeding or propagation purposes, provided that only the accredited individuals, business, research, educational, or scientific entities shall be allowed to collect for conservation, breeding, or propagation purposes. And also, it must be noted that many of the fish and shellfish species considered wildlife are also commonly caught for food. Under the Fisheries Code, the harvesting of food species that are endangered or threatened is regulated. And under the same code, no person can engage in any fishery activity in Philippine waters without a license or permit. And it is unlawful for any person to catch or take fish or any fishery species in Philippine waters with the use of explosives, noxious or poisonous substance such as sodium cyanide, as it will damage the biodiversity of the environment.
Oh, there are thousands of threats to this wildlife in the Philippines. Well, aside from the stated facts, as you mentioned earlier, are there human activities contributing to the deterioration of the biodiversity and the disruption of ecological systems? And can this be attributed to main issues or very point issues related to biodiversity and wildlife?
Yes, actually, human activity is the main contributing factor in the deterioration of our environment. We have these things we call land use change, and the most widespread form of land use change is agricultural expansion to ensure food security, and alongside it is to expand urban areas and infrastructures to cater to the growing population. These changes are often made at the expense of terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems, specifically to its local species losing their habitat and source of food for survival. And there are two environmental issues often related to biodiversity and wildlife, and those are biosafety and bioprospecting. Biosafety, it refers to a condition in which the probability of harm, injury, and damage resulting from the intentional and unintentional introduction or use of a regulated article is within acceptable and manageable levels, while bioprospecting means the research, collection, and utilization of biological and genetic resources for purposes of applying the knowledge derived therefrom solely for commercial purposes. An example of biosafety is a genetically modified organism which is a product of genetic engineering. It is a process that allows for the selection and transfer of specific genes from one organism to another. Although genetically modified organisms may seem promising, safety issues with respect to their possible effects on humans and the environment have been and continue to be raised.
One last thing, sir. I would like to know your stand on these issues. Do you think we, the citizens of the Philippines and the government as well, are doing a good job at lessening the detrimental effects to the environment? Or are there any suggestions you can provide to properly preserve the native species and their local species?
To be honest, we are not doing a good job in handling our environmental problems. Nature, our current efforts are not enough to meet our conservation and sustainability goals. As a developing country that is highly dependent to our natural resources, the Philippines is one of the most vulnerable to the negative effects of these changes, especially the poor and marginalized sectors. But, of course, there is hope. As members of the community, if we all get involved in environmental campaigns, organize eco clubs, join conservation programs, be informed and inform others of the local environmental laws, and be consistent in upholding the welfare of our environment, then surely we can save our environment from further deterioration. Miss Kat?
Okay, those are very nice words, sir. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. James Reed, Legal Officer of the Krusty Krab Foundation.
Thank you, Miss Kat. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you,
God
sir.
bless.
It is estimated that the total water availability in the country from its reservoirs is at 146 billion cubic meters or BCM of water per year, a condition where the supply of water far exceeds its demand. Experts claim that the rapid urbanization, improper management, pollution, and climate change continuously threaten water security in the country. On Sierra News Exclusive, a one-on-one discussion with freshman law students and natural resource enthusiasts, Ms. Aqualine Katubig and Mr. Matthew Big, on protected areas and water management, coming right now.
Greetings, Mr. Matthew Big,
a natural resources enthusiast and a first-year freshman law student. Today,
Mr. Big.
we'll discuss about protected areas and watershed management in the Philippines. So with that being said, I would like to ask you
Mr. Big.
about the current situation of our protected areas as well as the watershed in the Philippines.
Miss Lynn, as of today, according to the research, there are over 240 protected areas and increasing in the country, which totals over 6 million hectares of land that both cover terrestrial and marine areas such as national or local parks, forest reserves, and wildlife sanctuary. The said areas are managed by the National Integrated Protected Area System, also for that, for NIPAS for short. There are also over 143 identified critical watershed in the country.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Big.
Just to be clear, for our viewers, could you explain to us what is a watershed?
Miss Katubig, a watershed is an area of land that drains or shed water or rainwater into specific water of body, such as aquifers. Okay, where we can find groundwater. It is also known as a flowing water well.
That is very informative.
Mr. Big.
However, you mentioned that there are critical watersheds in the country. My question is that, what will be its effect to our water supply? Because nowadays, Metro Manila is suffering from water shortage. What is your idea about this matter?
Mr. Big.
Ms. Katubig, according to the studies, it is estimated that the water availability in the country from its water reservoir is over 146 billion cubic meters of water per year. So theoretically, the supply of water far exceeds its demand. But because of rapid urbanization, improper management, and climate change that continuously threatens water security in the country. The water scarcity is most felt in a highly urbanized areas such as Metro Manila, okay? Because they are often dependent either in water lines from nearby watersheds or groundwater aquifers. The continuous increase in water demand, according to the experts, resulted in uncontrolled withdrawal from groundwater aquifer, coupled with the rapid urbanization and deterioration of watershed due to deforestation. The rate of aquifer recharge significantly slow, and eventually led to the decline of groundwater levels. Thus, this sufficiently explains the Metro Manila water shortage phenomenon that we are suffering.
How about the problems of the protected areas in the Philippines, just like in Mount Tinagong Yaman? It is declared as one of the protected areas, but there are reports about the waters being contaminated and other problems. What can you say about this?
Mr. Big.
Yes, Ms. Katubig, Tinagong Yaman is discovered by the scientists to be rich in natural resources such as mineral deposits. That is why it is declared to be protected areas to preserve the place. But the problem is the information about its rich mineral resources spread out, and it attracted many mining company investors and start their mining in the mountain, which results to unfavorable and destructive consequence. One of which is contaminated water near mining site. People living on that mountain, and the animals, plants, and other natural resources will be on a great peril because of the continuous destructive utilization of the natural resources there.
Oh, that is awful.
Mr. Big.
What is our remedies? What are the existing laws or laws that should be enacted to solve or mitigate these problems that we discuss?
Actually, we have laws such as the National Integrated Protected Area System Act of 2008 as amended, and the Mining Act, as well as jurisprudence. The said laws provides for the specific protected areas. They provide for the specific protected areas, prohibited acts within the protected areas, and areas close to mining application. But in my own opinion, the protection is not absolute because the public authorities in charge of the protected areas can still issue permits or authorization to cut, gather, and collect timber within the protected areas. Also, under Mining Act, areas may be open to mining application and military and other government reservation upon prior written clearance by the government concerned. But on the bright side, the said laws provides no exception in the prohibition of undertaking mineral extraction, exploration within the protected area. That is why I do not know how miners could be able to mine in Mount Tinagong Yaman. Our current and future problem in natural resources, in my opinion, could be remedied by absolutely protecting areas without exception, so that it will not be susceptible by abuse to abuse or deceit to obtain such permit. In case that we need to utilize our resources, the same should be exercised with prudence, with proper study and environmental impact assessment to fully preserve our natural resources at the benefit of the Philippines.
Thank you very much,
Mr. Big.
for the insight and awareness to our natural resources and its corresponding problem.
So now, we will proceed to the part where we will discuss the policy analysis regarding the protected areas and watershed. Let us call on Ms. Aquilina Katubig to discuss first what is policy analysis and how it will play a great role in addressing the effectiveness of its laws.
Thank you, Mr. Host. Let us first discuss who is responsible in managing the areas designated for conservation and who decides what activities may be conducted. In the case of Province of Rizal versus Executive Secretary, this is a case where the concerned citizens filed a petition and challenged the constitutionality of the said Proclamation Order 635 because the main problem here was that parts of the Marikina watershed were set aside, and it happened at the height of the garbage crisis in Metro Manila due to opening of dump sites or landfills. The ruling of this case is that the San Mateo landfill that has been a problem will remain closed. You could clearly see that the one who is responsible in managing the areas in this place is the concerned citizen, the one who will benefit the most.
I would like to ask you, Ms. Katubig, how it is related to the main topic, the policy analysis.
Yes. Well, Mr. Host, policy analysis defines the problem that in this case, the dump site and the goals that it should not be there in the first place. Then, if there is an argument, it would review and analyze the policy itself. That in this case of Province of Rizal versus Executive Secretary, they address the problem of the people in Rizal in regard to the San Mateo landfill. According to the book of Don La Viña, which is Law and Ecology, the way of addressing the problem in this matter is that they assured the residents of the province of Rizal in a way of suspending the site's ECC because the concerned citizens reiterated that a lot of families would be affected by the dumping operations in that area, and heavy pollution and risk of disease would be generated if the dump sites would be rendered.
Oh, that is good explanation you have there. I heard that case. If I remember it clearly, The waters are also contaminated and has a problem within the upgrading of water quality in the Laguna Lake.
Yes, you sure read well, Mr. Host. The contaminated water was also found to flow to Wawa Dam and Boso-Boso River that turns empties into Laguna de Bay. Adding to this matter, during the hearing regarding the injunction, Attorney Mendoza reiterated that each city or municipality must take care of its own dam sites because the San Mateo landfill will be a much bigger problem. Because the garbage comes from many cities, it would be like a mini Smoky Mountain. These concerns are addressed in Republic Act number 9003. This act was enacted so that LGUs could adopt a systematic, comprehensive, and ecological waste management system which shall ensure the protection of public health. The law mandates the formulation of a national solid waste management. In this case, it highlighted that sanitary fields must be located within an aquifer.
Oh, can I interrupt you on that one? What is an aquifer?
Okay, Mr. Host, an aquifer is an underground layer of water-bearing permeable rock or unconsolidated materials from which groundwater can be extracted using a water well. It should be built underground because there is a certain clay that can help the water be cleansed so that the water would be clean and it undergoes the underground process. So the landfill must not be located in an area where the landfill's operation will not detrimentally affect environmental sensitive resources such as aquifers, underground water reservoir, or watershed areas. It helps the case of Rizal Province to address the issue in regard to water reservoir of protecting them from illegally building a landfill around them and thus declaring the Proclamation Order 635 illegally.
Did you think the law is a success in terms of environmental protection?
Yes, it is precisely to minimize the adverse impact humanity's action on all aspects of the natural world and at the same time maintaining and ensuring an environment under which man and nature can thrive a productive and harmony with each other. It answers both economic and being a steward of the nature.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the insight, Miss Katubig.
I am so much welcome and thank you so much, Mr. Host. I am honored to be a guest in Shera News.